What does the future look like for humanity? Well, as long as we don't go full ape mode, we won't blow ourselves up. Of course, with the possible production of mirror life, that's not exactly an ideal situation either. And if you want to know what that is, basically it's regular life mirrored, meaning if your body came across it and it was mirrored bacteria per se, or like the plague, it would literally have no idea how to combat it. Remember, life at one point were just all anaerobes, right up until cyanobacteria showed up and then polluted the atmosphere with oxygen, killing everything that was already established. Kind of makes you wonder if, like, one day in the future, there will be a footnote in a textbook about how this strange form of mirrored life resulted in the creation of two-legged animals that produced a bunch of plastic, and then they went extinct due to the rise of the cellular makeup that makes up us. You know, real Goosebumps vibes, sort of life restarting. Or why was life always on the moon looking at Earth like, oh yeah, we're aliens? Anyways, so the future, if we are successful in being the absolute cool guy species, would hopefully result in us being able to like ascertain resources from the surrounding environment as we figure out how to leave the solar system. And brother, there are some resources out there. To this end, this actually brings us around to where we are today. As two competing companies, a German company and an American one, vie for power in space, the Germans, which seems standard to run across something they weren't supposed to, which would immediately become the Americans' problems, all I can say are Nazi zombies, would run across something that was a creature, and it literally makes zero sense why there would be two comorbidities stacking bodies on one moon. So let's discuss that in today's episode covering the creature. I'm going to warn you, wear a helmet for this one. It's really stupid. We kick off our story with being in a competition for new materials. Two rival corporations are invested heavily in space, which is what we should be doing now. Or we could just blow ourselves up. I don't know, nukes? Yeehaw, brother. Let's do it. Richter Dynamics in Germany and NTI in the United States. And if history serves as anything to build on, USA, baby. Heading over to Titan, Saturn's largest moon, a geological team has begun to vibe out in the worst way possible. This movie's from the 80s, but it completely looks like it's from the 60s. I have no idea why. Also, knowing what I know now, there are a ton of assets in this movie that, I hesitate to say they were stolen, but there is no way these weren't copyrighted somehow. Like, they had to have been protected assets. So as they walk around looking at stuff, they are in some ancient structure, which is a little disconcerting given its proximity to Earth. Taking pictures of things, one of the pods is then broken as they decide to pull it out of the wall. Don't open the alien sarcophagus. That's like day one stuff. At minimum, use an alien stick to poke it. Grabbing a flashlight and then look in and see that it actually does have a mouth and sharp teeth. Assuming it moved, Unsafety Steve over here then tells his coworker to stand near it as they need him there for scale. Then asking him to sit down on the violator pod, it immediately begins leaking as then he starts freaking out. Inside of his suit, a bunch of blood shows up, and I'm not going to ask what happened to him there because let's just assume it was just magical goo that got into his suit. So anyways, we get the title card. Okay, but seriously though, why did that happen? Did the entire alien just straight up shoot up? Meanwhile, back over at an actual based moon, Luna, a craft is heading back towards Earth as one guy gets absolutely blinded by the radar, entirely. What would be the purpose of having that getting blasted into your eyeballs? As the craft then heads in and immediately crashes into the station, blowing it up. This will never be explained as to what was going on with this or why it was even remotely important. Maybe I was just flabbergasted by what's actually happening here, but this part only hints at what's going on everywhere else, if I'm being completely honest with you. I'll just tell you now, everyone crashes their ship for no reason. Everyone got their pilot's license from a Cracker Jack box, I'm assuming, because this is insane. On a completely different ship, some people didn't sit on the ground during a meeting like elementary schoolers, or as the Europeans say, primary schoolers. I have no idea what the years those are. All I know is university is high school, I suppose. Anyhow, a team who is on a research mission is being sent in, but they have a security officer with them. Riploff, as I like to call her, because they were hardcore going for the alien feeling, but it's absolutely botched in this movie, and it's really dumb. Having arrived, Riploff straight up just jacks some medications from the medical facility. As she walks out, the doctor is like, how could she have been on the ship for 3 months and not talk to anyone? Well, I have an ex-girlfriend like that, actually. It's much more possible than you might imagine. So as one guy then drinks some coffee, he's told it's bad for his health. Now, smoke a Marlboro. Actually, coffee is pretty good for you. Black coffee specifically has a ton of antioxidants in it, which have been shown to help prevent cirrhosis in the liver, as well as in some cases, help reverse it. It's limited in its capacity, so don't just be thinking, well, I'm just going to drink Everclear every night. But the understanding of that means, knock this stuff back like it's water, because I don't know about you, but I enjoy tequila every now and again on the weekends. Probably should cut back on that. Anyways, approaching Titan, everyone's hair is completely burnt out from flat irons because it is the 80s. As they get close, one woman then says it's creepy. Why? It's just a moon. Huh. Why would they freeze the moon in place? Bit strange, isn't it? As she has a bad feeling about the moon and how something about this trip is making her uncomfortable. However, that's not more important than the task at hand, so they make out as one does as we get, the standard 80s hookup scene. See, now don't you feel better about the creepy impending moon doom? Actually, it's been noted in astronauts that a lot of their anxiety will come from the fact that the Earth kind of has like this low hum to it, and I mean our biology is intrinsically related to it at this point, so if you don't feel the hum, kind of freaks you out a little bit. So scanning Titan, the ship then shows the previous team landed in the crater, deciding to not land in that crater. They're going just to the northwest of it, allegedly, and I would say top left square, but I mean, who really knows? Straight up stealing a noise from Star Wars, then approach the moon with finding intent. As they go to land, evidently nobody has any clue how to fly these things, land, or even protect themselves. Man, we are stupid in the future. Crash landing for reasons unknown, the commander then tells them to cancel the order to call for help, going against the captain directly. Riploff then comes out as her and the commander walk away. Going to check the immediate area, I have to stop and ask why this movie was requested. Inquiring minds wish to know, what is wrong with you guys? It's got to be an issue of wanting me to watch things that will 100% melt my brain. So basically, if this monster sucks, I blame you. Hey, so future Roanoke here. Bruh! Finding the previous research team's ship, unsurprisingly, you're gonna never see this coming. It crash landed. Seems to be the only way to pilot these things. Everyone heads inside as the atmosphere is then reestablished. Continuing deeper into the ship, the air allegedly is good as they call out for anyone in there, but clearly the thing is abandoned. Probably killed in the crash. Telling the team to, you go that way, I'll go home, they split up into a team of 3 and 1. Well, that seems dumb. Also, the spider webs are a nice touch, but why are there spider webs here? Finding the violator pod from earlier, the happy couple reunite as he kisses Flatiron over here and getting her face alarmingly close to an unknown biological fluid. Brilliant. I mean, one could assume that's not a great idea, right? Back over in the light bright area, I think the captain then messes with some panels as Flatiron, upon seeing this, literally eats something off of the table of an abandoned ship that she has no idea how long it's been there in the room with some mystery biological fluid. Are you serious? Do you even know what that is or how long it's been there? Good lord. So seeing some meat suits fall out, a shadow then appears as she runs away and then goes to get Riploff. Riploff fires at the creature, he said it, as in Flatiron gets trapped on the other side of a door with said creature and then gets squelched. Loverboy then freaks out as the best course of action seems to be just straight up sedating him when there's a murderous alien running around. What in the name of all that is holy? Riploff then seems to have jumped the gun on that one, but heading back out, the doctor is waiting for them as she asks what happened, but everyone has apparently gone mute. Heading back outside to the first alien movie planet. Genuinely, this is really not how Titan would look. It's apparently yellow and hazy. And also, while the atmosphere may support lightning strikes, the fact is we have never detected lightning strikes on Titan, ever. So it's not going to look like the first Alien movie where it's just constantly a storm. It's like, they were going so hard for the Alien vibe here. Like, guys, pull it back a little bit, The yellow hazy thing would have been cool. I don't know, why not just start raining liquid ammonia? That would have been cool too, but stop making it look like... Anyways, so finding more pods, evidently everything in there is over 200,000 years old. Turning on the neon lights, it seems the aliens were also stuck in the 80s as well. And if I see Flatiron alien hair, I'm gonna lose it. Finding more bodies, everyone's just straight up not having a good time as the captain then comes in asking where everyone is, as he asks random peon number 3 how she's doing. Well, not so great since you crashed the ship, Captain. She then crashes out as she asks the captain if they're all going to die. Yes, you are. The captain says, I intend to live forever. He's like, oh hey, can you put together another KFM transponder so we can call out? Ah yes, the KFM transponder, very good. Riploff then puts back up her force multiplier, a lot of good that did, and then she stares at herself angrily while she strips. Also very 80s. Looking in the mirror again, Touchy McGee comes in harassing her as she pulls a force multiplier on him. So, at first I thought like maybe this was just a crew member they forgot to introduce, but no. This is just some random German who was just surviving out on the surface of Titan long enough for this rescue ship to show up and him not starve to death or run out of oxygen. Or die of dehydration, or anything else that would make sense of why you wouldn't survive on the surface of Titan for an extended period of time, whereas your crewmates are totally gone and there's things running around and aliens that are eating people through their butts. I don't know. This whole movie is ridiculous. I can sum this up with one question. How? And they also have no idea how this guy got on board, so this dude finds people and then immediately harasses the first woman that he finds. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out for him. Not telling them any information on the creature, I guess because he's German, I have no idea, and he's from the rival company, which I guess that sort of tracks. He then tells them about the specimen and how he had his friend sit on the container. The thing was alive, and then we don't talk about what it did to Franz afterwards. So Hans now freaks out as Sedated Man sits up from an uncomfortable window. Who placed him here? This is such an F-tier situation going on. Anyways, seeing Flatiron outside the window, he then calls back out to her, but back in the meeting, Commander then yells at Hans about blowing up the creature. They're informed that they can't do it, as Hans then leaves the location to go somewhere. I have no idea. The real question is, where are you intending to go? Loverboy now goes to follow Flatiron out into a cave system where her helmet isn't on. Brother, you are not doing this for real, right? You're aware something bad is going on here. Finding her stripping, it's the 80s, baby, as Bro is thinking with the wrong head as his helmet is then taken off, and he suffocates fairly quickly while she makes out with them. Gotta blur a lot of this, but applying a thing to his face, the doctor then runs in saying, Loverboy is gone. Hans is back now for some reason after making the scene about leaving, and then he eats their food. There's a lot of talking in this movie, and not a lot of creature. It should have just been called Talking, not The Creature, or Creature, whatever. What is this movie even? It's called Creature. So Commander then says he's not going out there, as Han says something to Riploff, which I don't know if it's a language thing or an audio thing, but my god, I cannot hear anyone talk. I might just be getting old. That's a very real possibility. And then working on the transponder, Loverboy then calls back to them as he says, I bet you didn't expect to see me again. Well, why exactly? That's not sus at all, as Loverboy says he wants to go home as the brain slug continues to eat his cerebellum. Pretty sure there's a Futurama episode describing this exact situation humanity faced, which means now whalers on the moon is canonical who carry a harpoon, but there ain't no whales, so they tell tall tales and sing a wailing tune. Meanwhile, back in the Cave of Wonders, everyone in there has their brains sucked out. All of Han's friends have been debrained, I'm assuming, so these things are not just interfacing, but it appears also they're consuming brains. Very good. Approaching another pod, again, one must ask, why are there so many lightning strikes? The atmosphere, again, is capable of it, but we've never detected it, so constant flashing is not how it actually goes down. Whatever. Anyway, so finding Flatiron, her brains have also been sucked out as she goes and then attacks the gruesome twosome. The captain now suits up to go outside, so again, where is the creature? We're like 50 minutes into this movie. Kissing random peon number 3, she then tells them good luck as they leave their crash ship and head towards the other crash ship. Quite poetic. Heading inside to most definitely not find this creature the movie claims exists, they then find Loverboy with a stylish head wound. As they get the whole rundown on the area, the doctor then says, well, we should check Loverboy's head. As he says, no, I'm fine. The captain then tells him it's an order, and the doc needs to look at his head, as they have to apparently leave the room to go do this. The captain says it's strange, as it seems as though Loverboy has already forgotten about Flatiron. Loverboy then says he has a secret to show the doctor, but the lights are out, as then he heads in, and does not turn on any lights. If anyone ever tells you they have a secret to show you and then walk into a dark room and you follow, you deserve to be consumed by the creature. Hard stance, I know, but that's your own fault. Doctor of Biophysics then calls out to him as he tells her to come in. No thanks. Calling out to him some more, he still doesn't answer. Great cue to leave. As instead she runs into the funhouse area as John then grabs her, literally clawing off parts of his face. He holds her there as, excuse me, what is that? Is that Alien? Brother, is this movie just completely jacked assets? So she screams as Captain and Commander then talk about how they are sweating, yet Loverboy wasn't at all. Hypothalamus damage quite clearly, or decreased metabolic activity. That might be more in line with what we were looking at given the parameters around survival on the surface. So heading to engineering, the creature is currently finishing off its woman witch as Loverboy's face is almost completely gone, which now starts attacking the captain. Luckily, Commander then shows up and blows up his favorite peon on the ship. And speaking of peon, random peon number 3 is left in the dark as something slashed the wiring outside. If it's that easy to catastrophically damage this ship, just a little tiny panel that is super thin, I guess it kind of makes sense why they always crash land in anything. I mean, imagine surviving re-entry into an atmosphere or planetary environments that are dangerous and incredibly hostile. Like, it's no wonder these things just completely crap out. Putting on her suit, something then enters the ship, and by something, my hope is it's the creature for more than 3 seconds, so I can actually get a look at this thing. Don't hold your breath. Calling out to whoever it was, she starts searching the ship as then she heads back to the KFM transponder location as someone then walks in the background. Oh god, it's someone. Who's that? Who knows? The Germans have apparently returned, which were not important at any point in this movie. So, also, full stop, this German dude just says, join me and my friends, my precious. So now we've got Lord of the Rings involved. Look, I don't want to make waves here, but this is just one of those episodes that, like, what am I even doing at this point watching this? This can't be a real thing. How was this movie made? Turning into a game of keep the slug away from me, random peon number 3 then heads to the airlock as they start breaking in. The strength required to do this does not exist in the human form, just so you know. This is a bulkhead to stop the atmosphere from venting into space. A person is not breaking through that. running outside without her helmet. I suppose she could survive for at least a few minutes, and in the secondary crash ship, the captain and commander are all sweating from their interaction as random peon number 3 is still being stalked by the Germalians. The captain and the commander then head back to the other crash ship, saying they have been taken, like all their suits, so they have none left, but there must be an emergency suit somewhere. Looking outside, they then spot random peon number 3 approaching, as then she runs and just kind of falls asleep. Someone then walks up behind her and drags her into the airlock as the captain and commander now run in. But who dragged her in? The Germalian, of all people. Like, you guys didn't even take a look at who this was. You didn't recognize them. So Commander then fires a shot off as he gets grabbed and his eyes start getting poked, I guess, as the captain then pulls the brain slug off, stepping on it. Random peon number 3 then wakes up, but again, why did she pass out there? Why did the Germalians then drag her back in? This is making very little sense. I've accepted at this point, it's basically the plot needs to move ahead. Random peon number 3 then says he tried to kill her. Technically, I guess he saved you. The captain deduces it's mind-controlling slugs. Random peon number 3 claims she ran out of oxygen and that's why she passed out for a nap. You know, as a treat. The commander forgets his line, saying, "What are we going to do about this thing?" as random peon number 3 devises a plan to electrocute the Germalians. Simply splice in the fusion lines and then blow up the whole planet. Brilliant. Now, where did I put that engineering degree? Agreeing this is how it's done, the captain and random peon number 3 then go to walk through to engineering alien style. And I want you to know, we are over an hour into this, and we have seen this creature twice for 2 seconds. The meter is definitely still running, at least concerning my interest in this movie. I'm really just more curious as to how this movie was even made. Who funded this? Also, walking through without turning on any lights, because why would you ever want to do that? Random peon number 3 goes to mess with some wires. Ah, yes. She's going to wire block D into the bulkhead. That will eventually open, I guess? Of course, it's so simple. So she's going to rig this thing into the computer, but the installation apparently cannot handle the current. Very good. The creature then makes its third appearance, going after them, posing very little threat as the captain then guards the door with it coming towards them. Random peon number 3 finally succeeds in her task and then electrocutes the holy hell out of that thing. Man, that looks just really stupid. As the soundtrack from Galaga starts playing. Approaching the creature, they ask if it's dead. Well, you do have, I don't know, set phasers to fun in your hand, so why not pop it a few times? Like, just double tap is all I'm saying. The captain then pokes it a few times, man's God-given right, humanity number 1. I mean, what is a force multiplier if not a stick-adjacent tool? You can poke things from further away. The captain then fraternizes some more with random peon number 3, as then he walks off and she just sort of hangs out in the area with this thing on the ground. Curiosity overwhelming her, I suppose, as then she looks at the alien barbecue. She then pokes it with her foot, man's God-given right, it's difficult to say, as then it gets back up. See, had you not poked it, this would have worked. And I like how everyone just assumes the thing was gone forever. We don't even know what really kills it. Random peon number 3 then gets strung up by the creature, as she's alive for now, and then looking back through the door, oh man, 4th sighting. The commander says the captain cannot go in there as the commander finally finds his pair, saying he'll be able to get the room open in another way. Running back to his gooning cave, he then tells the captain how to access the room. The commander then finds some concussive force detonators written in English on a German ship. Granted, it's been made known to me recently that English is a business language apparently, and then running back to Spiderweb Central, which makes very little sense given it's an abandoned ship in space. Like, how would there be enough of an ecosystem here to keep spiders alive? The commander then stops answering the captain as he just decides, I'm gonna go for it. However, the door won't open, so using the Ooga Dooga brain, he blasts it, and then goes to grab random peon number 3, which that means he could have just done this the whole time. Why would you not have just done this earlier? So the commander's plan was not even remotely important, as the commander, meanwhile, sets the charges for 30 minutes, and all I can say is, thank God we don't have 30 minutes left of this movie. The creature arrives, 5th sighting, as assumedly, the commander is screwed. The captain now descends into the murder pit, as the creature is eating the commander's neck, as, 30 seconds, that's what it was set for. The captain then launches them both out of the airlock, but the commander went out like a real one, because he was like, yeah, send me out of the airlock. Fraternizing couple then run as they spot the creature has somehow doubled back and beat them to the airlock. This thing hasn't run more than 1 mile per hour the whole time it's been alive, and now you're telling me it's running down the dream over here? Like, okay. So closing the airlock, the captain then drop kicks the creature outside as he gets snatched up by it and then thrown for reasons unknown. The reality? It could have just eaten him. That would have been way better. As if almost divinely, Riploff shows up and then blows apart the creature, as then she drags the captain back in, asking where Riploff went. I don't know why, but it was just like so matter of fact. She's like, I went back to the ship. Nobody was there, so I came back. That's it. That's her explanation for disappearing halfway through the movie. Yeah, okay, checks out, I suppose. Oh, and then she admits she got lost. How embarrassing. You don't know the surface of Titan? In reality, they couldn't afford this actress, so they just kind of had to get rid of her and then bring her back at the very end because they realized that was kind of a loose plot point. Random Peon number 3 then asks if we are having fun yet, as the captain says, well, let's go home. How exactly? Riploff then gives something to Random Peon number 3, as somehow they then pilot the crashed ship off of Titan. So what was the deal with the KFM transponder? You guys could have just done this at any point. What is happening? Why did I cover this? And thus concludes The Creature. Hello and welcome to the science portion, you giant nerd. Again, bite of the hand that feeds. I probably need to stop having so much coffee prior to doing these things. So let's start from the beginning, shall we? First off, this ship structure is artificial, not natural, as the late and great Cortana would put it. That means someone built it, which is rather interesting, but I think I have to kind of put together an idea here that helps to explain what I just watched and why you're probably confused and why we probably both should be. I know, very strange movie, and the fact is, it was suggested by someone, and that's virtually unforgivable. However, I am required by law to keep loving you, so I'll take my rage out on my own body. Let's go to Denny's. As we look at this entire event that was incredibly stupid, there's one major thing that stands out to me. The pods on the alien ship that were 200,000 years old. I mean, around that point, since humanity is allegedly around 300,000 years old, because we found a skull in a cave, we were still running around at this point, fighting saber-toothed cats and hunting woolly mammoths. But this is indicative of a species that clearly is not from Titan. This species, with the teeth that are known as, I guess, the creature, actually would be dealing with the same issue as humanity would in the future. I won't blue ball you on this one because there is a much more interesting topic we're going to move into, which is essentially based on the idea of different forms of life. So when we look at what's going on here, it's clear this is a species of life that could likely and probably is carbon-based, much like humanity is. Upon coming into contact with the moon Titan, they would then land there where they may have interacted with something that was already down there. Upon this happening, it's clear they would have a nervous system relatively co-evolved, or as we know it, convergent evolution, which convergent evolution, just for your own edification, is the development of traits where there's actually no relation or is considered to be really far away from one another. For instance, sharks are older than trees and showed up roughly 450 million years ago, whereas dolphins appeared about 50 million years ago. Dolphins being mammals and shark being fish. Yet, they both have streamlined bodies for water and are quite similar to one another in a lot of respects. These traits convergently evolved due to the environment, which then brings up another interesting question. What in the name of all that is holy would allow something like the anglerfish to evolve? You ever notice how close that thing is to hell, given it's at the bottom of the ocean? It deserves that fate. But the point of this extremely righteous and morally correct hatred of an anglerfish would mean, basically, that the environment itself, clearly, plays a huge role in the formation of traits. Because whatever is successful are the traits that arise more often and more regularly, which is why anglerfish look demonic. So, if this is the case, then what are we really looking at here? The violator species, ripped from Alien, are actually a highly advanced form of life that were spacefaring from everything that I can tell. Entering Titan, they would interact with these brain slugs because they did the same thing that humanity would do, which is crash into the planet, or not planet, but moon. But let's be real here, Titan's probably a captured planet, and then would have convergent traits of having like a head, and contained within that skull, they would possess their own anxiety meat. The brain slugs would actually attach, likely through the neck, interacting with the vertebrate species. Now, you may be asking, well, Roanoke, how do you know they have a vertebral column? Man, I'm glad you asked. There was a guy here who probably wanted to ask but never did. To understand how the intelligence and bones are linked together, you need to understand the physics associated with gravity and the mass of your head, and for this, we can look at the other primates before getting back to humanity, or specifically your head, which is giant. When you look at a gorilla skull or a chimpanzee skull, what you will probably notice is that the areas where the parietal lobes are located, which are on the sides of the brain, are simply behind what is known as the parietal bone. On the top of the head, you have more of the frontal bone, but when you look at it, it sort of, at least with apes, juts inwards. So, why is this? Not only do the masticator muscles attach to this area, allowing for the jaws to be more powerful given the food that they are eating is much more tough, but along with these attachment points at the back of the skull for muscle, those have to be much more robust to support the weight of the skull, brain, teeth, and tissues that are residing within. There are not really other truly bipedal primates apart from man, so because of this, the spine itself, as in the bone, actually do not support the weight of the skull. They serve as a protected bridge, much like our spines do, but the muscle is what's supporting the actual skull's weight. And this means the skull has a certain limit concerning the weight that it can be, and those attachment points will need to take up these areas that the brain otherwise could exist within, because it's more important to keep your head attached to your body. So now we jump over to Homo sapiens. Why are we so different from everything on this rock? Well, first and foremost, we are the absolute chads of the animal kingdom, sort of like a jack of all trades, but clearly the most intelligent of anything on this rock, and by extension, the most powerful. And obviously someone's going to say, well, Roanoke, why don't you go fight a fish fight a bear and you see how strong you are? And I say to that, yeah, I mean, I'm built different, so I can. But more importantly, let's break down why even maybe you would survive a bear fight, because the bear is simply using what nature gave it, such as claws, teeth, and muscular power. Humans, by comparison, are using what nature gave us, greater intelligence. The bear will not nerf itself in a fight against you and take away its claws, teeth, and strength, so one must ask, why should you as a human? Using man's gift of intellect, the humble 50 caliber Desert Eagle enters the scene and takes care of the problem. 1v1 with any animal on this rock with using man's exact traits of which we're capable of annihilates anything else. Humanity number one, we are pro-human around these parts. Bears can catch lead any day of the week. Anyhow, humanism aside, because I don't really know where that came from. At one point or another, according to the theory of evolution, we stood up to check over tall grasses for predators. Evidently, we did this so much that it would begin changing the positioning of our skulls. Along with this, given the plantoid structuring of humanity's foot dating back to Australopithecus back in the day, it's clear we had left the trees and were moving on the ground more and more. And I believe it was around this time the trees were basically receding and the savanna was actually cropping up more because things were getting warmer. But this would necessitate our bodies to be capable of dealing with these changes, which then resulted in a more springy Achilles tendon, storing energy for the next step, our femurs and pelvis angles changing to support long-range movement, and the spine actually moving more directly under the skull to support it properly and taking the pressure off the muscles to actually keep it in place. But then, something interesting would begin happening. Because of all of these changes, connection areas of the skull needed to be less robust and the brain could continue to grow. Along with this, the food that we were eating switched over likely from fibrous plants to more berry and meat-based, or at least bone marrow based, likely scavenging for hundreds of generations. The softening of the food that we were eating meant the masticator muscles of the skull needed to be less stringently attached, which is the parietal bone area. And this allowed for the skull to not dip in as much, then allowing for the brain to grow, and with the incoming protein, it began to expand outward at a much faster rate until the goated sapiens species would arise. Absolutely game-changing on the build of anything that had ever come before. We are the best. And if we look at the species on Titan, they also appear to be truly bipedal, which means likely they have actually a similar evolutionary pathway as humanity, and their own spines moved under their skulls. Given the sharp conical teeth that we see, it's pretty clear that they are probably purely predators on their own world, or worlds, I guess you could say, and protein would likely be something that propelled them up the technological tiers and intelligent tiers as well to become spacefaring. But they are probably true carnivores, whereas humans are omnivores. However, there is another piece to this puzzle that we need to talk about, and it's the ability of our species and this other species to live in the same exact environment at the same exact time. However, there may be two reasons for this, and I just remembered I actually wrote the other reason towards the end of the video. So yeah, we're going to talk about the first reason for a while. So now, as stated, I believe humanity and the space lizards, or whatever that thing is, are both actually carbon-based life forms. Now, what does that actually biologically mean? Well, on Earth and for the space lizard species, this would mean that major biological molecules are built on chains and rings of carbon atoms. I remember organic chemistry, absolutely hated it, but carbon is a reoccurring element through all of these structures. Carbon in general is stable enough that it can form equally stable molecules for life to exist, but they are also easy enough to break to release energy or form new molecules at the same time. They walk a fine line allowing for life to exist in the first place. Too rigid and we would just kind of be a rock. Too loosey-goosey, and the issue would be life wouldn't be able to stay together long enough to form anything of any complexity and exist to what we have now. So everything is great, right? Well, as with anything ever in the history of forever, there are pros and cons for just everything, I guess you could say. For instance, carbon-based life forms can exist through a fairly large temperature range without its structures being compromised, around negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit to around 252 degrees Fahrenheit or so. Now, at this point, those are going to be extremophiles, like at the very ends. So, I don't know, you won't drop dead in the lower range, but you will need to find warmth if you are exposed, just like if you're You won't drop dead immediately at 252 degrees either, but you will start to burn. Respectively, that's also around -20 to 122 degrees Celsius in heathen units that nobody else in the world uses, and if you suggest otherwise, you might be a crazy person. Anyways, so at this point, you can kind of surmise something though. Carbon-based life actually needs to exist on the warmer side of things, and that's sort of the problem because energy itself is not as easy to come by as you might think. Most of the universe is quite cold with pockets of warmth, and in these wide swaths of freezing temperatures, theoretically, other forms of life could pop up with entirely different bases, and for this, two come to mind that would explain the brain slug: methane-based life and ammonia-based life. Now, these would clearly use liquid methane as a solvent for biochemical reactions. And you want to know where we think this could take place? Specifically on Titan. In their own internal metabolisms, rather than using oxygen as the energy currency, or at least what it reacts to, they would instead utilize acetylene that would then react with hydrogen to produce methane as a byproduct. Ammonia, on the other hand, it's quite polar and similar to water in this way. They could actually use methylamine as the molecules that they use instead of methanol, and typically they would actually be built from something like silicon. For reference on all of this, on Earth, water is the solvent in which life exists for us, but therein lies the issue. It needs to be liquid water. If it's frozen, well, it's not going to really progress, as neither would life, as it just isn't going to work. So let's focus in on the liquid methane as potentially the solvent for life on Titan. Breaking down Titan's atmosphere, as with Earth, nitrogen is the majority of that atmosphere, making up roughly 95.1% of the troposphere and 98.6% of the entire atmosphere itself. But remember, it is cold on Titan. Titan has an average surface temperature of around -290 degrees Fahrenheit in freedom units, or about 180 degrees Celsius, and again, the thing that nobody uses. So therein lies the problem with the current atmosphere. The reality is, liquid rivers of methane and ammonia, those lakes just exist on the surface right now. Lakes, rivers, whatever. Puddles probably as well, I'm sure there's a few of those, but they're locked away from becoming gases and actively and dynamically changing the atmosphere percentages. But this is actually a good thing for the evolution of the brain slug. You can kind of think of it this way. If all the water on Earth evaporated, it would change the atmosphere, but that would be a really bad thing for anything on Earth. The same can be said for Titan. If everything that exists now evaporates, well then anything that was there would be totally screwed. And believe me, it will happen as the sun expands in its later years of life. I believe it's in roughly about 1 billion years or so. The sun will become too luminous and Earth will become too hot to exist on, unless humanity if we're still around by then, which we won't be sapiens anymore, we'll be something completely different. We may get sentimental around this time, just sort of move Earth away from the sun, or build something to block out some of that heat. But as the sun enters its red giant phase, what's sort of a complete apocalypse for life on Earth because it requires water as a solvent, Titan will begin to warm up as well. Titan is considered to be like a primordial Earth, if you didn't know. When Earth was much more volatile at the beginning, we also had a ton of hydrocarbons everywhere, and over time, it became what it is today. Titan will likely begin to undergo a similar process as the sun becomes more of a red giant and then showers the captured planet with more energy. The lakes and rivers will evaporate and then move into the atmosphere, and any water that may be frozen there will begin to melt and replace those rivers and lakes. To any life form utilizing methane and ammonia-based structuring, they will become too unstable for the rising temperatures and will fundamentally die off as a result. No different than the species here that uses water as a solvent that then turns, to a gas, and then the species here will die because this planet gets too hot. And that's what's wild about it. It's just the same thing, except allowing it to exist in colder environments. Just as an off comment though, given the status of the universe and how temperatures range, it sort of seems like methane and ammonia builds get a little bit more leeway when it comes down to the fitness in the environment, as opposed to carbon-based life forms, simply because of where heat may be and how cold everything else is. Anyhow, so what does this all mean to this movie? Well, the brain slug clearly is a species that appears to have originated on Titan itself, and this other lizard race, they just kind of ran into it, dealt with the same thing 200,000 years ago that the Germans were dealing with in the 80s. So in the end, humanity would be betrayed by another species in our own solar system. What a bunch of chodes. But then we have to ask, well then, what is this process? First, the brain slug species, given it's not exactly crazy mobile from what I can tell, are easily squished, and they would clearly reside within liquid rivers and the lakes of Titan. This may indicate that there are other species in there, creating an ecosystem, also possessing a nervous system in which this creature would then attach into. So that's a whole other issue, because that would mean that Titan has entirely new forms of life and structures, and with that, the moon is haunted by life. But the Germans just so happen to run across another species that crashed there because that seems to be what everyone just does for funsies. And I mean, this kind of makes sense as well. Given the temperature of Titan, even if it is methane or ammonia-based life, chemical reactions would be happening, but very slowly, meaning any creature that evolved this way would likely be long-lived by our standards, as everything happens slower. This would also mean differentiation amongst species would take much longer, and the leap from single cell to multicellular would also, it would just take a ridiculous amount of time, more so than on Earth. Like more energy, more changes in a shorter amount of time sort of deal. Now the question is, specifically with this slug, would it be ammonia or methane? I'm inclined to believe ammonia. Ammonia has a boiling point of around negative 28 degrees Fahrenheit, but at 10 bars, it can actually exist as a liquid up to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So about 9.8 atmospheres. Humans can regularly exist at 1 bar at sea level, and we can exist without too many issues up to 5 bar. At that point, the air becomes toxic as too much oxygen is being breathed in. Of course, we can exist at 50 bar for a limited amount of time in deep diving records, but that requires decompression afterwards. So 10 bar, while not great for humans, is survivable. And if this is the case, the brain slug could do several things. First, it's important to understand that this could very well be an internal adaptation the creature is capable of. Looking at it, it appears as though it may have an exoskeleton of sorts, and if we can assume this, then we may be able to apply a rather interesting idea here. We know Titan actually has a pressure 50% greater than that of Earth. It exists around 1.5 bar quite regularly. As a result of that, not only does this keep pressures higher in ammonia and methane at liquid levels, it also allows for a greater range at which it can remain a liquid on the surface. Maybe not 77 degrees liquid, but definitely higher. So here's what I propose personally, because we need to kind of come to an agreement on something. Clearly, the brain slug is exposed to the atmosphere of Earth inside of the ships of man and lizards. This would mean that if this is a different form of life, which it likely is, it would need to internally pressurize its own exoskeleton in order to survive the atmospheric differences. Otherwise, its body would just boil away. But then, how does it interact with the nervous system of another species? It's clear that after attaching, something fundamental has to happen to not only it, but also to the host. After attaching to the brainstem, it would effectively cut the brain off from controlling the body, but I believe this is just the first of the attack, because it's clear at certain points it is able to infiltrate the brain and then utilize memories, planning, speech, as well as understanding other human speech patterns. So in order to do this, the brainstem is the first affected, which is what initially puts the person down and wrestles away control. Given the innate ability of this brain slug to actually, interact with the nervous system, this would require its own nervous system to be ejected from its body and into the human. And it would also need some sort of protection to not allow for a nervous system to be built on ammonia to just evaporate. And this may take the form of simply like a film on each neuron, holding the pressure internally at a higher rate. The next action needed is to lower the body temperature considerably, and this is probably something it does very quickly. Following the spinal cord through the foramen magnum, which is the hole at the base of the skull, allowing for entry into the spinal cord, allowing entry of the spinal cord, some of the tendrils would then break to the back of the skull, where they would encounter the cerebellum, furthering control over movement, and then some would begin moving to the midbrain area, where the hypothalamus is located. Disrupting function in this area disrupts homeostasis considerably, and this can actively lower the body temperature to near hypothermic levels, which is what we have seen when Loverboy isn't sweating while everybody else in the room is. It's because his body temperature has already crashed out, and he didn't just warm back up enough, and he's been outside. He's pretty cold. Now, prolonged cold body temperature has its own consequences, but for the short time he's impacted, he is able to, technically survive. From here, it's interesting how the body really doesn't enter a state of shivering unless it's already been so cold for so long that his body's just kind of given up, but the tendrils would then move further into like the Wernicke's area and Broca's area. Wernicke is responsible for language comprehension, and Broca is responsible for speech. By interacting with these areas, it would be able to figure out human language and then force the body to speak by firing signals. It can be assumed also that the hippocampus becomes activated at a certain point, allowing for the brain slug to see memories of the person. And to this end, this is how the creature is able to entice Loverboy out of the ship by using memories of him with Flatiron in order to infect more people. It's all basically just a hunting strategy. Eventually, the tendrils would then reach all corners of the brain, where it would in turn actively begin controlling the body, and to that end, standard consciousness is likely also terminated, as the brain would no longer be firing upon standard pathways, and instead, it would be influenced. And also, based on the Germalians later, it looks as though the brain slug will eventually attach to critical areas, basically the top of the spinal cord, and consume the brain, and then just control the body. And I believe it will probably have the memories of everybody at this point that it's infected, or at least eaten the brain of. So it no longer really needs the brain to be there, so then it takes over. So basically, at first you're being puppeted, but you're just not really aware. It would be like being in a deep sleep and then just never waking up again. However, we still need to answer one more question. How is it possible that the body can survive outside then? Well, given the nature of the brain slug and its own manipulation of the environment using its body, I would have to ask it after you get infected, like, are you already dead? If you are in the ship, I believe you're probably still alive. However, if you're stuck outside for any prolonged amount of time, such as Flatiron and the Germalians, I think that they're already gone. Their skin is sucked in, their faces are desiccated, their movement is ungainly and awkward, indicating extensive neurological damage. Even like the motor neurons are damaged, or even muscular tissues are beginning to break down, and this is going to be kind of a problem. And given the natural clean state of ships and the fact that there are not any microbes primed to deal with carbon-based life, as in breaking it down, decomposition-wise, the bodies of the Germalians are still usable, probably for longer. And along with this, the lower temperatures practically halt decomposition entirely, even with the natural homegrown bacteria you may have within your body. However, with Flatiron, because she has not been outside for very long, she still looked relatively okay. That way, we could have a naked makeout scene, as is standard with any 80s movie. But that is how I see it working. The species evolved on Titan naturally, which indicates there is a fairly complex set of events taking place, allowing for it to exist on the surface of Titan, but also on the bodies it takes over. Given that the aliens were clearly spacefaring and got, I don't think they brought it with them, and instead, they landed and realized what they were dealing with. Excuse me, they didn't land, because nobody can land ships. They crash landed, and then when man ran across it, it was able to attack and begin taking over humans. Now, why was that ship running into the station at the beginning even remotely important? I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure that part out. Like, oh no, it got hit. How did that thing get hit? You know how much space there is in space? A lot. Your guess is as good as mine. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, good God, I don't know how. If you enjoyed me making fun of this movie, please like the video and subscribe, as it helps us finally get past 1.2 million subs. Although I haven't checked in a few days, I might already be past it. Probably not, though. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales channel links, and other stuff in the description. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the astronaut tier, we have Kuseth. Thank you, bro, for your awesome support. Next up at the astrophysicist tier, we have Desk Dancer, Myura, and Webitron Supreme. Thank you as well, guys. And at the scientist tier, we have Stutz, Frank Shaft Crank, I Actually Love Electric Cars, the Anglerfish, Metric System, Invictus Echo, Official Texan, and the homeless guy on the street. Kicking in on the Patreon. Thanks, brother. But thank you guys as well. And the rest of my patrons, I really do appreciate y'all's support. It goes a long way towards helping out, so thank you. All right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed all of this, and I'll see y'all in the next one.